The night was cruel, the kind that cuts through layers of clothing and chills straight to the bone. Snowflakes swirled like tiny shards of glass in the wind, blanketing the streets in white silence. Daniel kept his head down, clutching the worn paper bag of groceries close to his chest as he trudged home. He had picked up what little he could afford: some bread, a carton of milk, and a pack of noodles. His hands ached from the cold, and his boots, the soles nearly worn thin, barely kept the slush from soaking into his socks. He was exhausted, but that was nothing new. Being a single dad meant exhaustion was a constant companion. Between his 2 jobs and raising his 8-year-old son, Michael, Daniel had long ago learned to push past the tiredness. Tonight, though, something felt heavier than usual. Maybe it was the storm, or maybe it was the thought of his boy waiting at home, probably sitting near the little space heater they depended on to keep the living room bearable. Daniel quickened his pace. He wanted to get home, cook a simple meal, and read Michael a story before bed. Despite the struggles, those bedtime moments were sacred to him, the reminder that love could thrive even in hardship. As he turned a corner near the bus stop, something caught his eye. At first, he thought it was just a pile of snow pushed against the bench. But then he saw movement, slight, trembling, fragile. He froze, his heart skipping. 2 little figures were huddled together, curled up on the cold wooden bench, their arms wrapped tightly around each other. His steps slowed as he took in the scene. They were children, 2 young girls, no more than 10 or 12, their clothes too thin for this weather. Their hair was damp with melting snow, their lips pale, their tiny bodies shaking violently with the cold. For a moment, Daniel stood still, the world blurring around him. He could almost hear his own heartbeat thundering in his chest. He knew what it was to feel abandoned, to feel the weight of the world pressing down without anyone to help. His instincts kicked in before his thoughts could catch up. He dropped the grocery bag onto the snow-dusted ground and rushed to them. Hey, are you all right?" His voice was soft, careful, as if he feared they might shatter. The older girl lifted her head, eyes glassy with fear and exhaustion. She didn't speak, only tightened her hold on her younger sister, who buried her face against her shoulder. Daniel's throat tightened. He quickly shrugged off his coat, worn but warm, and draped it around both of them. The older girl flinched at first but then relaxed as warmth seeped in. "It's okay," Daniel said gently, crouching so he could meet their eyes. "You don't have to be afraid. My name's Daniel. I live just a few blocks away. Can you tell me what happened? Where are your parents?" The younger one whimpered, her voice barely audible. We don't have anyone. We were waiting for someone who said they'd come for us, but they never did." Daniel's chest ached as if someone had wrapped a vice around his ribs. Abandoned, alone, in this cold, he couldn't imagine the terror they must have felt. He glanced around. The street was empty, the storm growing harsher by the minute. If he left them here, there was no telling if they'd survive the night. "All right," he said firmly, though his voice wavered with emotion. "You're coming with me. My son's at home. You'll be safe and warm there." The older girl's eyes filled with hesitation, but when Daniel reached out his hand, she looked at her sister, then slowly nodded. That small act of trust felt like a weight placed on his shoulders, but it was a weight he would gladly carry. Carefully, Daniel scooped the younger one into his arms. She was so light, it was as if the cold had stolen all her strength. The older girl clung to his side, her tiny fingers gripping his sleeve as though afraid he might disappear too. He grabbed his grocery bag with his free hand and started walking as quickly as the snow allowed. By the time he reached his small apartment building, his arms burned from the effort, and his face was numb. He kicked open the door with his boot, letting in a blast of cold air before shutting it firmly behind him. The warmth inside, though modest, was enough to make the girls sigh in relief. "Dad," Michael's voice came from the living room, followed by the sound of little feet pattering across the floor. He stopped short when he saw the strangers in his father's arms, his wide eyes full of confusion. "Michael," Daniel said softly, setting the younger girl on the couch and guiding the older one beside her. "These girls needed help. They'll stay with us tonight." Michael looked from his father to the shivering children, then nodded solemnly, as though he understood more than most kids his age should. Without hesitation, he ran to fetch the extra blanket from his bed. Daniel moved quickly, setting a pot of water to boil. He found 2 bowls and filled them with the instant noodles he had planned for himself and Michael. He served the girls first, watching as they held the warm bowls with trembling hands, their eyes wide with gratitude. The younger one slurped the noodles hungrily, while the older girl kept pausing, staring at Daniel with a mix of disbelief and relief. "You're safe now," Daniel reassured them, his own eyes stinging as he spoke. No child should have to freeze in the snow. That night, the tiny apartment was filled with more warmth than it had felt in years. Daniel sat back, his son curled against him, watching the 2 strangers slowly drift into sleep under the blanket. For the first time in a long while, Daniel felt something stir in his chest, a reminder that even in his own struggles, he still had enough to give. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most important thing of all. Morning light filtered through the thin curtains of Daniel's modest apartment, casting soft streaks across the worn-out couch where the 2 sisters still slept, curled beneath the blanket. Their breaths came slow and steady, their tiny bodies finally at peace after a night of warmth and safety. Daniel sat quietly at the small kitchen table with a steaming cup of coffee, his eyelids heavy but his mind restless. He had barely slept, replaying the events of the night over and over. Something about the girls tugged at his heart more deeply than he could explain. Michael stirred awake on the floor beside his father, rubbing his eyes. "Dad, are they gonna be okay?" he whispered, glancing at the couch. Daniel gave his son a tired smile. "They're okay now. We'll figure out the rest." Just as he spoke, the sound of tires crunching through snow echoed outside. Daniel frowned. Few cars ever came down this quiet street, especially not this early. He rose, careful not to wake the girls, and peeked out the frosted window. What he saw made him blink in disbelief. A sleek black limousine idling in front of his run-down building, its polished surface gleaming even under the dull winter sky. Before Daniel could process it, the front door swung open with a sharp knock. He hesitated, then moved to answer, his chest tightening with unease. Standing there was a woman in an elegant coat, her hair perfectly styled despite the weather, diamonds glinting at her ears. She was out of place in this neighborhood, like a figure from another world. Her eyes, however, betrayed no calm sophistication. They were frantic, darting past Daniel as if searching for something, or someone. "Please," she said quickly, her voice trembling. I was told they might be here. 2 girls. My nieces." Daniel's breath caught. He stepped aside without a word. The woman rushed in, and the moment her eyes landed on the couch, her composure crumbled. She let out a broken sob and crossed the room, falling to her knees beside the sleeping sisters. Her hands trembled as she touched their hair, her tears spilling freely. The older girl stirred, blinking awake, and when she saw the woman, her eyes filled with recognition. "Aunt Claire," she whispered. The woman, Claire, pulled both girls into her arms, holding them tightly as if she would never let go again. "Oh, my sweethearts, I thought I lost you forever." Her voice cracked with raw emotion, echoing through the small apartment. Daniel stood frozen, his son at his side, both watching the reunion unfold. He didn't know the details, but it was clear the girls had found someone who loved them, someone who had been searching desperately. Relief washed over him, though it was quickly replaced by a strange ache in his chest. Claire eventually turned, her tear-streaked face softening as her gaze fell on Daniel. She took in the surroundings, the peeling paint on the walls, the patched-up heater humming in the corner, the simple groceries sitting on the counter. Then her eyes returned to him, filled with something he hadn't expected. "Ah. You." Her voice broke again. She struggled to compose herself. "You don't even know them. And yet you gave them warmth, food, safety. You gave them what I should have been there to give." Daniel shifted uncomfortably, shaking his head. "They were freezing in the snow. I couldn't just walk past. No child deserves that." Claire stared at him, silent tears sliding down her cheeks. Slowly, she rose and stepped closer, her hands clasping together as though in prayer. "You don't understand. I've been so consumed with work, with everything. I lost sight of what mattered. These girls are all I have left of my sister. If something had happened to them..." Her voice trailed off, and she looked away, trying to regain control. But the sight of Daniel, tired eyes, worn clothes, yet a heart so open, made her break down again. You've reminded me of something I forgot long ago, she whispered. That success means nothing without compassion. Michael tugged at his father's sleeve, whispering, Dad, is she crying because she's happy? Daniel rested a hand on his son's head, nodding gently. Yes, buddy, she's crying because she found what she lost. Claire turned back toward him, wiping her eyes, and suddenly her voice grew firm, carrying the weight of decision. Daniel, you shouldn't have to struggle like this. You shouldn't have to choose between putting food on the table and keeping the heat running. You've given so much, even when you had so little. Please, let me help you. Daniel frowned, instinctively shaking his head. I don't need. Yes, you do, she interrupted softly, but firmly. And that's not shameful. You deserve better. Your son deserves better. She reached into her purse, but then stopped, as if realizing money alone wasn't enough. Instead, she straightened her shoulders, her eyes clear with determination. I run a company. I can offer you a job. Stable, decent pay, benefits. You've proven the kind of man you are, the kind I'd trust to lead. Please, accept this, not as charity, but as gratitude. For saving the most precious people in my life. Daniel stood stunned, his words caught in his throat. A lifetime of rejection, of scraping by, of never being seen or valued, it all collided with this moment. He glanced at Michael, who looked up at him with hope shining in his eyes. For his son, for the two girls now safe in their aunt's arms, he swallowed the pride that so often kept him silent. All right, he whispered, I'll accept. Thank you. Claire's face softened into a smile through her tears. She extended her hand, and Daniel shook it, their silent agreement more powerful than any contract. That evening, after Claire left with her nieces, promising to return soon, the apartment felt different. Not richer, not grander, but warmer. Michael leaned against his father as they sat together on the couch. Dad, today felt like a miracle. Daniel wrapped an arm around his boy, pulling him close. It was, son, sometimes miracles don't come from the sky. Sometimes, they come from people choosing to care. And in that quiet, humble home, the truth settled like a gentle flame. Kindness, even in the hardest of times, could melt the coldest snow and change the course of many lives forever.